Let's look at what we have discussed last time. Basically, last time we discussed the introduction, the module, your module expectation, as well as evaluation, and finally we look at overall organization vision and mission, and also look at what requirements that you need, each of these different users in a information system. Right. Now to do that, I told you some of the references I'm using for this module. I'll be using throughout the course the last reference, the recent version of that. And then here are the topics that we are planning to cover again from the syllabus. And we were looking at how and why and what system analysis and design is, right? Basically, we are going to discuss each of the phases involved in developing information systems, which will give you useful information, right? And then again, we were discussing when you before start looking at the information systems, um, as a system analysis should have a good understanding about the organization. First of all, good understanding about business profile. That means the mission and vision. For example, we discussed how Peradeniya mission and vision. And then there are business processes involved, right? And then we discuss a couple of different types of information systems available, ERP, for example, handle all the requirements throughout from each of the users to top management, and usually handle everything. Then we call it a ERP. But if the system is basically handling day-to-day transactions, we discuss this as a transaction processing system, especially the general users or the low-level, data, entering persons using transaction processing systems. Then when it comes to professional level, we usually have business support system where when you want to make a decision, you can get the help out of these information systems. Then knowledge management, systems, especially when you want to search particular cases, like for example, in law, for example, all the law cases you can keep in a large databases where when you want to refer some problem, you can identify particular cases which is actually relevant for particular case. And then again, user supportive systems are there. We call it user productivity systems. So any information system that we are planning to develop should come under one of these categories. And this is not the complete list of it, but this is how the book actually classifies different information systems. Now then we also look at different user requirements, for example, top managers. In our case, vice chancellor level, those top managers will look at long-term strategies, especially strategic plans. And then we have middle level or knowledge workers, especially in, for example, in university system, deans of faculties and maybe heads of the department, work on providing resources, the directions, right, the feedbacks for actually those who actually work in the companies. And then there will be supervisors, team leaders within this, and at the same time, those who are actually doing the work, we have operational employees. So basically, these different users need different requirements, and that is one of the things that we have discussed. Right, now to do this, there are plenty of ways to do this, and in particularly in this course, we will basically look at traditional structured analysis, while there are many newer techniques are there, right? Why structural? I mean, if your mission vision is very clear, if you have the well-known processes, and if it is well handled within the information system developed, then this structurality is easier because nothing much change, um, uh, when you're designing and implementing, right? But then again, if you have like, uh, modern information system, so when your information requirements are changed over the time, then yes, you have to go for agile, um, like Scrum, and then maybe like extreme programming, right? And the finally, we discuss a group work, and many of you actually asked those who could not participate last time how to work on the group. Since we are going to do the group work with the allocated time period, that means between 1 to 4. I want everybody to participate in the group work, but if you couldn't, like for some reason couldn't participate in the group work, then it will be a individual work, right? So I hope you understand the point here, right? And basically, the question given to the first group is basically identifying one of the organization of the group mates, and then looking at objectives, aims and objectives, as well as identifying different types of users and their requirements, and what kind of information systems members thinks about the intended information system development, right? And also for the development, we also ask them to identify what kind of strategy they were planning to use. So this is what we have basically covered last time. So today's one, right, I would like to discuss more on this, especially when it comes to system planning. We would like to know, sorry, let me share the screen. So my today's session, I want you to focus more on systems planning, right? So in the system planning and initial investigation, we are going to talk about like how, first of all, the proposal, or we start talking about something called business case. We look at whether the proposal or the suggestions for the proposal for the information system, whether it's a strong business case and whether it meets company's overall mission and objective and whatever the IT needs, right? So that we will discuss first of all. And then once we have developed that, we are going to discuss like how this preliminary investigation is done. Because once you want to develop an information system, we need to study, initially there are some investigations out there, whether, for example, whether you have enough finances to develop such a system. It depends on the economy. For example, nowadays the country situation is getting really bad, meaning like if you are in a government sector, and if you want to develop information system, although the requirement, you have to have a strong business case to do this, otherwise no money for new developments, right? So that's exactly what we are going to start with. So let's start today's session. And at the end of this, you are going to work on the related terms among the organization you choose among the members, and then work on a couple of things on initial investigation, as well as like project management, right? So those are the two things that you are going to do at the end of today's session, right? To start with, if you remember our structural standard life cycle development, we have seen this is as the first phase in the system development life cycles. And the idea of this is we want to build an effective information system. And doing so, we need to, help the organization, right? But When it comes to top management during their strategic planning, we have to, look for the purpose, the vision, and the values, and then you develop the mission statement. And that is what we want to take it to goals and objectives, and also like can be boiled down into day-to-day operations, right? Um, Now, to do that, usually once we have any kind of a requirement, we can analyze, good or bad. So one technique people usually use for this during the strategic planning is SWOT analysis. Now, I hope like many of you have already heard this word before. SWOT stand for S stand for strengths, W for weakness, O for opportunities, and the threats. So by doing so, we can perform SWOT analysis and asking different types of questions. Like, for example, okay, the first question will be something like, okay, what are our strengths? And how we can use these strengths to achieve our business goals, right? Now, for example, in Unis Repair, then we look at, we want to produce, 100% employable graduate. So in that particular case, so how do you achieve that? Now, to do that, what are the kind of strengths we have? Now, for example, I told you the other day, we have a well qualified staff members who has taken their PhDs, mostly PhDs from foreign countries, which I think benefit one of the strengths in University of Peradeniya. Then, okay, what are our weaknesses and how can we reduce or eliminate them? Now, for example, when it comes to University of Peradeniya, we are far from Colombo where we have the commercial capital, which might sometimes affect, like, for example, our graduates may have like more opportunities if we have located near Colombo, right? So how can we like, reduce, to do that? So that is one of the weaknesses, right? And what are our opportunities, right? And how do we plan to take advantages? Like there are a lot of opportunities. Now, for example, the being far from Colombo, right? What are our opportunities and how do we plan to take the advantage of them? Like I told you, like being far from Colombo is a disadvantage, but now we have more space, right? How can we like, get the advantage of this? Like, for example, that's why I think the Professor Sarachandra and all come up with this, all these excellent dramas like Singabahu, because they used to have like this calm and quiet, as well as the environment in Peradeniya, I think affects for those inventions as well, also the activities. So which I think is very useful. And finally, what are our threats? And how can we assess, manage, respond to those possible risks? Now, these early days, we don't have, the private universities are popping up, and then everybody, can get the equal opportunity. So now it's not like we want to maintain, our stand. Like right now, we are the number one, but how do you like maintain? So threats are coming on. So we have to assess like what kind of a threats we are getting from the outside. So I think this is one way to, look at the case. But remember, this can be done in different levels, right? SWOT analysis is not only look at the organization only, right? You can look at this, you can perform SWOT analysis for, different levels, right? Now, for example, you can do it for an organization, right? Like what I'm trying to do last time. This is actually example for the organization where they look at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So obviously, they are going to have SWOT analysis on the organization in here, right? They talk about strengths as excellent web design staff, low system analysis turnover, recently upgraded network. So they have identified as strengths of the organization. And the weaknesses, right, as use of several legacy system, old systems, and the budget increases was turned down, your request, but it's turned down due to, let's say, economical reasons. And the old documentation, maybe documentation needs updating. So you identify what the weaknesses are. Then the opportunities, well positioned for expansion, maybe the geographical location can be first with the new software and high potential for business to business growth. And the threats they have identified as aggressive new web competition, impact of new set of rules. I think this is something to do with this government rules and other forms of a better benefits. So which basically you can see this sort analysis done organization level. Now, another thing that interesting to see is this SWOT analysis can be done in micro level as well. Now, for example, this is for a corporate patent, right? So that means you can do as an overall organization, but at the same time, you can perform SWOT analysis for the, for example, particular project, right? What are the strengths and what are the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Right, so this is important. No, so you can see, depend on our requirement, we can perform SWOT analysis to understand, what strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and the threats are having with the, project. Now, the during the system analysis phase, and analysis reviews the business case, which is the basis. That means the business case provide you the reason for the proposed system. And then this should actually describe whatever the project. Now, here we talk about the project is the designing of information system, right? And you need to justify. You have to justify the budget, the amount of money that you want to spend. Okay, before I proceed like I did earlier, I would like to get some, your exposure to the SWOT analysis. So have you done at any point of time SWOT analysis for your organization or somewhere else? Can you share your story with us? Anyone sometimes you might be doing this regularly. Sometimes you might, engage in, doing this for organization for some point of time. Or maybe you can just by looking at it, you can come up with something regarding your organization. Anyone in the class that you would like to contribute for this discussion? How about Lahiru? Okay, is this the first time that you have heard about the SWOT analysis? How about Shifani?
Yes, sir. If we consider an organization like a tourist hotel, tourism industry, so the strengths we can take something like the location where they have beautiful view in our country, and the food, the excellent food, and the hospitality can be taken as strengths. Weaknesses can be like if they don't maintain the proper websites and update them regularly with their promotions, those kind of things.
And even now, if you relate to Sri Lanka, maybe now we have bankrupt. The current
Yes,
situation is not
that is
good. Oh,
another
yes,
big
definitely. Yeah.
weakness.
Excellent.
And
Opportunities.
opportunities like yes, like we can improve always the quality, especially when it comes to like food. They need different varieties, different cuisines, and different taste they expect. Those can be. Is it correct, sir?
Yeah,
Opportunity.
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. What do
And
you
the
mean by, what do you think about the threats then?
yeah, the threats are the one like especially the competitors and the rates and all, like when competitors give into a lower rate and then we will lose our customers.
Exactly. So if you taken as a countries, the other countries competing with other, giving a lot of other benefits.
Yes.
By the way,
So,
Shifani, where are you working?
I'm related to this private university, like I'm a visiting lecturer.
Ah, okay,
Mm,
okay.
mm.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for anyway sharing your insights on the SWOT
Thank you,
analysis.
sir.
Thanks. We'll move to the next one then. Right. Uh, Now I told you, like once you have identified the uh, understood the organization, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, then you can actually put up a business case or reasoning for a proposal for information system. Now, during that time, we need to answer a couple of questions like why we are doing this, what is it about, right? How particularly this solution give us the key business issues, the cost, and how long it will take, right? And the productivity loss during the transition. You know that, let's say right now you are doing everything in manual, and then let's say you are proposing a new information system, and at some point when you implement, you have to maintain both the system, new system and old system together. We will discuss these details, but that time, there will be a productivity loss, right? And what will be the return on investment and the payback period, which is again we are going to discuss in coming sessions. Like you are spending some money, and then uh, at later stage, this even the information system is very important in the beginning, but the times goes up, the importance goes down. Maybe you need to maintain the system, you have to spend a lot of cost and so on. So these things we need to assess even before we develop such a system. And now when you want to say that we want to improve maybe productivity, right? Maybe we want to um, improve our brand name, whatever it is. Like how do you measure that success, right? So those things you have to think ahead before you even put up a proposals. And then whether there are any alternatives. Now let's say your top management turning down your request, say that okay, okay, according to country situation, now we can't move ahead. So whether you have any alternatives, whether there are any existing systems, right, which you can think of, right? So all these, cater to the, coming up with a strong business case. Right. Now, usually when it comes to system projects, or especially information system projects, we initiated to improve the performance or providing more information or reducing cost, especially like we can reduce the manpower, we can reduce the documentation, right? And you can strengthen the controls, because since everything is recorded, you know what is happening instead of manually you examining this. So what that means is at the end, you can provide a better service. So if I take a university, for example, if we managing everything, in computer systems, then we know what is going on. Even student handling will be very easy, and we know what is happening. let's say a student is not regularly participating, we know there's a problem which we might have to look for, right? So there are various factors affecting this, like user requests, meaning like different users in the university, for example, we have different requirements. Like for example, in our setting, we have requests from the lecturers side. We have requests coming from non-academic staff members side, and as well as administrative staff side, and so on. And at the same time, the top management one who's actually decide and providing directives, right? And at the same time, when you're developing a new system, you have to look for what is existing systems are. Now, for example, in the university, we already have a county system. So if you are getting some other system, you have to look for whether this is matched. You have to make sure that once you come up with something, what will happen to the existing systems? Are you going to throw away, or are you going to incorporate those already existing systems with the new one? So all these we need to understand. And usually in any organization, you have an IT department where they are the ones who actually consider all these requirements. Now, for example, in the university, what we have is called IT service committee or something, if I remember the name correctly, where we meet every month to see the requirements. Like, for example, looking at the web, our web, right? All these ranking comes up because we need to regularly meet and see. Since we have nine other faculties, we have to look for the different websites. So IT service companies look into these matters. Not only that, this decision made sometimes depend on your software and hardware, vendors as well, right? Now, for example, if you look at for database technologies, if you already have, some kind of cooperation among the some of the vendors, like that might help you to reduce the cost. That might need less trained personnel because you already have some, and so on, right? And then technology, customers, as well as competitors, and definitely economy and the government. You see, now you are realizing that, okay, it's not really a particular organization. If something happens to the economy, if something happens to government, definitely it will affect us as well, right? So in this one, you can see when it comes to system request, there are reasoning for this one, and these are some of the things that we have already discussed, why we need the system request comes in, right? Now let's look at feasibility study. Once you have a strong business case, right, you have to collect information on, before you go for the development, whether this is feasible. When you talk about feasibility study, we have to look for different aspects, like whether whether we are in a position to operate once we have the information system in place. Because sometimes, let's say your company is operating manually, but let's say you are trying to come up with a new information system, and if you do not have the required personnel, if you do not have the requirement mindset, that might be a problem. So this is called operational feasibility. Similarly, if when you're developing an information system, you need computers, servers, the network, everything should be set up. So whether you have a technical feasibility to do this, that is another question we need to answer. Then economic feasibility, the amount of money, the cost. Not only that, when you say cost, it's not just the software development, right? You develop the software, then you have to have people to manage this, and then there are maintenance costs. Altogether, you have to talk about all this. This is called total cost of ownership. So that means before you develop an information system, you have to see whether it's economically feasible, right? Not just development of software. Then schedule feasibility. right? Scheduling means like, now let's say you have decided to develop a project, you have to have a reasonably feasible phase, whether you can finish this for an acceptable time frame. So that is what we call schedule feasibility, right? So these things actually should be understand during the preliminary investigation, and then you have to report it to the top management, right? So what happens here is system analysis is look at this preliminary investigation and look at the system requests coming from different users, and then maybe recommend particular action, right? Once they get the authorization from the top management, especially to work on this, right? Then you have to interact with the managers and users. Then the analysis can, take on problems, opportunities, as well as business scope, constraints, project benefit, and estimated development time and costs. So at the end of this phase, you will get a report, which we call preliminary investigation report. Right. So let's briefly look at the steps of preliminary investigation, understanding the problem or the opportunity, and defining the project scope, constraints, and the fact finding, right? Basically, you look at what needs to be done, user requirements, everything should be done during the fact findings phase. And then analyze project usability, cost, benefit, and the schedule, and the feasibility, evaluation of feasibility, like the four things that we have discussed: operational, technical, economic, and schedule. And finally, you present this recommendation to the management. Right. Okay. So we can see here the what will happen to the fact finding, phase as a graphic: problems, opportunities, the benefits, the costs, project scope, and constraints, and then you report to the management. Right. Now, with that one, actually, we will complete the discussion of our first part of the today's session. Right. The next one, I would like to look at a little bit on project management. Now, why I say project management here, it's important because it's actually starting from the planning, scheduling, monitoring, and reporting of development of information system. So as we have seen in the previous preliminary investigation, is this timing is very, very important. So if you want to say that your project is successful, then you need to complete on time, and you have to restrict within the budget, and you have to deliver the product in quality, right? And basically which satisfy the users. So this project management is basically, in between, cost, scope, and time, and also with the constraints, because you don't have like a lot of money, you have a limit of money, you have a limited time, right? And scope means like you cannot like cover everything that you need. So which means you have to limit yourself, you have to work with the constraint, you have to find out the right balance. So these three actually will known as project triangle, because you have three things here. That means project cost, scope, and the time. So that you have to actually find the right balance. Right. How many of you actually work with, projects? Like any one of you have work on managing projects? Can you share some of your thoughts? Okay, right. Um, let's look at the responsibilities of project managers. Now, one of the prime responsibilities of project management is the project planning. So as a manager, you need to identify all the tasks, and then you have to estimate the time and the cost, right? So when you have a particular task to be done, okay, let's say you are going to develop an information system, you have to, as a project manager, you should be able to identify the time it takes as well as the cost it will take. And then you need to use different tools for scheduling, timetabling, right? Like there are different charts available, CAN charts and PERT and CPM charts, which I will discuss very briefly. Then there should be a way to monitor everything, right? Whenever requires, he or she should be able to guide it, supervise it, coordinating the team's workload. And finally, you have to report to the top management, as well as the other general users, as well as the project team. Right. So when you say planning, scheduling, monitoring, so everything actually takes place within a large project development. And we are going to look at three things. First one, work breakdown structure. How you are going to break down each of these tasks. That is the first one. Then you identify task patterns, like some tasks are depend on the others. We need to identify that. Then finally, we need to identify what will be the critical path, because we know that at some point, right, the whole project time, depends on this critical path. Okay, so let's start looking at each of these, separately. Now, work break structure is something like this, like any project, you break the whole project into, several tasks. And then you have to identify each task and also the duration, right? So that is like very important. So any project work given here, so first of all, you need to identify, okay, what are the tasks, right? For example, in this particular case, there are some tasks are ordered with task numbers, with some descriptions as well as days. And then this last part comes later on. The first step is you identify this set of tasks, what to do with it, right? So in particularly in this example, you can see there are 7 tasks are there, and also with the duration. That means as the first step, you identify each of these tasks, and then you identify how long it will take in days. So this time duration actually depends. So it could be days, it could be weeks, it could be month. The unit of measurement you need to decide, right? So that's, should be understand in the very beginning. You have to decide like what is the unit of time you are going to, consider this. And the next one is like, uh, here actually show you work-based structure in an Excel sheet. And you can see all these, tasks with their duration, right? And then actually in the next phases, actually you can look at the details, right? For example, in this particular case, you can see what are the predecessor tasks, means like what needs to be done before you start the particular task, and how the dependencies, right? How they actually dependent. So software can be used, right? So this is sometimes we call, Gantt chart, which we use horizontal bar chart to represent this project schedule, right? So which means now, for example, here we will have task 1, task 2, task 3, task 4, and so on. And these horizontal bars represent their, the time it takes. So indication of start and the end. And it also shows individual task and task groups. And sometimes in a task, you have several tasks, right? So the bar length is actually duration of the tasks, right? Now, for example, in this particular case, what you can see is this particular task 1 is started in, sometime in February and goes to sometime in March, right? And the second task is start once the first task after some time, and then third task starts in mid March, and so on. So current date actually shows you, and some of the progress are represented in yellow color here, which sometimes again another way to show them. The blue bar shows you the actual scheduling, and yellow bars or yellow color represent how much actually has finished during this period of time. So for example, task 2 actually not completed as expectedly, whereas task 5, for example, task 4, for example, actually go beyond the expectation, right? All these can be represents, right? uh, One of the problems with the Gantt charts are it can display the progress, but dependency or resource, assignments and what needs to be assigned for these tasks is actually not reported with Gantt charts, right? So another chart is we call PERT or CPM chart, which shows you the network as network diagram. And here, everything is connected using arrows, right? And there are like ways of calculating the time it takes. So for example, in per chart, we can, determine the time using, I will come to that equation where we can, discuss how we can, calculate the duration. And then project manager can use the PERT chart to determine the overall duration, right? And during that one, he or she can come up with the task IDs and their duration, right? At the same time, you can also get starting and finishing times, and because to finish the particular task. So by using this, you can identify the critical path. Critical path means what tasks are more important or keep your eye on, right? Because if any of these tasks within the critical task, if get delayed, it affects the overall project timing, right? So here are like some of the information where we can actually look at, right? For example, you can look at the charts, and then you can look at the duration, and then you can, come up with the dependencies. Each of the box that you will see here, you can keep track on the task details, the starting time, ending time, and so on. So you can keep a lot of details with, per charts. Not only that, sometimes this is another example taken from outside, a per chart for website designing process, where we can make, or we can indicate who are the responsible persons for each of these tasks. Now, for example, in this particular case, we can have here the George is the one actually start with the web design, and the robot will be writing HTML, and George again provide the contact support, and then Linda provides the artwork. And all these places you can see start and end dates are indicated, and the task number is there, and also the duration also given, and the arrow indicates the dependencies. For example, now to start writing HTML, which comes after designing the website, context service provider also comes after the first one. Create artworks again comes as the first one. So dependency also can be implemented. Now, by looking at number of weeks it takes, you can see in the red color the critical path. Now, according to this one, you can see how long it will take, right? So, according to this one, 8 weeks are allocated to complete this one. If nothing is get delayed, the task within this critical path, then it won't affect the project type, right? Okay, so let's look at like the differences. Now Gantt chart gives you a snapshot view of the project, the tasks, and also the durations. But if you look at the PERT charts, it's actually useful for scheduling, monitoring, and controlling. Right. Now let's look at how we can identify the task in work breakdown structure, right? So because we have seen the very first step to any of these charts, we have to identify what are the, tasks are. Now, this work breakdown structure will give you each and task individually, right? And it will normally have, when you say a task, you have a starting point as well as you have ending point. And to perform that particular task, you need resources. It could be people, it could be time, it could be money, right? And then if you take every project, you have events, or we call milestones, right? That means you can record the performance at that point, right? So that is also there. Right, now here one example. Here we are using questionnaire. To use a questionnaire, you have a series of events to track the process, right? And so first of all, in this particular case, you see some ovals there where it will indicate the task, like starting work on the questionnaire, questionnaire approved, all questionnaires distributed, all questionnaires returned, tabulate complete, and finally you report to the management, right? And then the task you can see from the event. For example, preparing the questionnaire goes from the first two events. Then distribute the questionnaire comes on the second and third one, and so on, right? Next, the time duration. Now, when you want to assess the time for any task, sometimes we don't know exactly how we are going to calculate. Now, one way is proposed, like for example, in here, you look at what is the best possible time, what is the worst possible time, what is actually probable, right? by looking at these three values, we can estimate the duration it will take to complete a particular task. So we add B plus 4P plus W, and then you divide by 6 to get the average value. Right. Any questions up to this point? Or anything that you want to contribute for our discussion? Right. Okay. So let's do a small exercise there. I want everybody to work on the problem, right? And send me the answer in the chat. So I can type if you want, equation. So expected task duration, we will put it like this: B plus 4P plus W, and then you divide by 6, should give you the time. Right? Can you send me the answer through the chat, WhatsApp? Yes, I got answer from Valuka, right, Pradeepa? So let's work on this. We have best possible time. The task is a file conversion task, and it says it might take few as 20 days. So the best time would be 20, isn't it? So we can put 20. Or it can take many days as 34 days. That is a worst case, right? So it could be 34, right? And but most likely, that means the most probable timing should be 24 days. So we have to say 4 into 24. And then we need to divide by 6, right? So which means those who have calculated, can you tell me what is the value I'm getting? So what we want to do is 24 into 4 will get 96 plus 20 plus 34, which is 150, is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we want to get 150 divided by 6. Yes, which is, I think, 25 days. Okay. Yeah. So you think like these are all estimates. Remember that. Uh, so in the work breakdown structure, you identify the task and then the duration. So you can use this as a example where you can identify the timings. So here the proposal is you identify the best possible time, worst possible time, and most probable one, and you use b plus 4 p plus w divided by 6, which will give us 25 days for this problem. Okay, so I got couple of answers. Waluka, Pradeepa, Shifani, and Lahiru, and Tarindu. Right? Okay, good. Let's move to the next one then. Right. Now, factors affecting this duration, right, which is again a very important one. The project size, right, that is one factor. Human resource requirement, and also the experience with similar project. You know that when it comes to when we are performing the same project and again, then you are very familiar and the time it takes will be reduced. Maybe the cost that you need is also reduced. And then also any constraints, right? So by now, we have identified what are the tasks, and we also discuss how can we identify the duration. So those two things we have already discussed. The next thing that we need to discuss is task patterns. That means when you have a tasks in a project, there are some dependencies, because anyway the tasks are dependent to each other. So sometimes it may be like depending a task, or maybe you have multiple successor tasks or multiple predecessor tasks and so on. And if it is a very complex project, these patterns are very complex, but we'll look at very simple ones. Now, before we move on to these task patterns, in a task box, we are going to keep this information, which is very useful. So in a task box, we will keep, right, task name. And usually you can also have starting date and also finishing date. We can have a task ID, and then you can have a duration. So this is very important. Sometimes you need to understand, right? And the next one is the patterns. So we are going to look at actually, three types we are going to identify. The first one is we call dependent task, which is means like you have to complete that task to go for the next one. And the second one is multiple successor task. Okay, maybe I will show you the graphic first. So this is the dependent task, right? And this is the multiple successor task, which means to start this, for example, here, this is task number 1, this is task number 2 and 3. Now, to start task number 2 and 3, both has to wait to complete the task 1. Similarly, last one, multiple predecessor tasks, mean to start the task 3, you have to wait until both task 1 and task 2 is finished, right? So these are like some general patterns you will see. But then again, when you have very simple one, the task will look like this. And here you have dependent tasks and multiple successor tasks. Now here we have dependent tasks. And these are multiple successor, meaning 3, 4 wait for 2 and 5, 6 wait for 3. And this one you have everything, right? So here 1 is depend on, 2 is depend on 1. So 1, you have to complete 1 to go to 2. Then 3 or 4 actually wait until 2 is finished. And 5 and 6 is waiting until 3 is finished, right? And here 8 is waiting until the 4 and 7 is finished, right? And 7 is also waiting until 5 and 6 is finished, and so on, right? So you can see this. Now that you have identified these patterns about your task, you have in a project, you identify these tasks, the durations and these interactions. The next important one we need to discuss is called critical path. So in critical path, what we say is we are going to use in the critical path, you can identify the time it takes to complete the project. And if any task in the critical path get delayed, right, you can say the entire project will be delayed. So this time we call it slack time, right? The slack time means, you can delay the start of the work, the task without pushing the completion task. But in critical path, there's no slack time, right? There's no slack time when it comes to, critical path. Okay, here is an example, right? A small task for you guys. You can see couple of tasks, right? How many dependent tasks you can see? How many successor tasks that you will see? Multiple successor tasks. How many multiple predecessor tasks you can see? Yes, how many we can identify? So we can identify one dependent task. That means the task 2 is dependent on task 1. Then one multiple successor task. To start task 3 and task 4, you need to complete task 2. And task 5 is actually depend on task 3 and task 4. Right. Now the task numbers are given, duration is given. I want you to find out the total time needed to complete this project. Let's say these are the tasks. And I want you to identify what is the critical path. Now, for example, one thing you can do is you can start, in this one, you can have, let's say, start. You can say day 1. So that is what we need to have here. Start day 1. So now, if you start with the day 1, it will take 10 days. That means what is the end date? Yes, Prasad, what is the end date?
Day 10.
Yeah, it should be day 10, right? So the end will be, the end of the task will be day number 10. Yes, it will be day number 10. Then let's move to task 2. Hasanti, can you tell me what is the start date to hire analyst?
ID1.
My question is like, what is the day number here? Because in what is missing here is starting date and ending date. For the task 1, it took 10 days.
Yeah.
So that means you start with day number
11.
It should be day number 11. Yes. So starting meaning day number 11. Yes, if you start with day number 11, Right? Chamila, can you tell me like when is the end date?
41 days. 41.
Yes.
41. 41.
Yes, one answer is 41. Any other answers? So from day 11, you have to count 30. What will be the
40,
end date?
40.
Another answer is 40. Which one is correct? Is it 41 or 40? Now look at the first one, task one. We start with the day one. Duration is 10 and ending also 10, right? Simply one of the things that you can actually do is you get the start date at duration, right? And when you subtract 1, you will get the end date. See whether you can understand this one. For example, here start date is 1, duration is 10, 10 plus 1 plus 10 is 11, subtract 1, the day is 10. So this one, yes, you start with 11, duration is 30, that means 41, subtract 1. So you should end with day number 40. Right. Now you know that plant training and arrange logistics, both waiting until the higher analysis task is finished. Right? Ratnayaka, can you tell me what should be the starting date for plant training? Sorry, plan training.
41.
Yes, since we are finishing day number 40, I will put only 41 because the space problem. I will just put 41 here. The starting date will be day number 41. Sekhani, can you tell me what is the end date for plan training?
45.
41 plus 5, that 46 minus 1, 45. Good. Right? Then Sama, can you tell me what is the starting date for arrange logistics?
46.
Okay, one answer is 46. Prasad?
41.
Yes, Prasad says 41. Which one is the correct one? Is it 46 or 41?
41.
41.
Yeah, arrange logistics can start right after the task 2. That means task 2 ends in day number 40. So that means we can start with 41. I hope you understand now, because you depend only on task 2, not on 3. If you depend on task 3, yes, you have to say 46. But in this particular case, it's depend only on task number 2. So which means day number 41. So if the starting date is day number 41, right? Yes. Sivakumaran, can you tell me what is the end date for task number 4?
66.
Yes.
66.
Is it 66? Kanishka?
65.
Yes. I told you, like, you get the starting date at the duration. That means 66 minus 1 should be 65. Yes, 65, isn't it? Yes. 66 minus 1, 65. Okay. Right. Lahiru, can you tell me? Now, announced training is actually waiting both task 3 and 4 finished. So which means what is the starting date for announced training? Yes, it should be 66 because we know that this will take 45, but you cannot start the training 46 because you have to wait until this one is also finished, which means the starting date for announced training should be 66, right? If the starting date is 66, Kalaivani, can you tell me what is the end date?
95.
It should be 95, right? 66 plus 30, 96, 1 minus 95. So the total project time, right? Project time is 95 days. Yes, the total project time is 95 days. Which path is a critical path? Right? There are two paths, right? One path is we have task number 1, 2, 3, 5, right? This is one path. Another path would be 1, 2, 4, 5. Yes, which path is the critical path? Critical path means the change of the completion of this task is actually affecting to the duration of the project.
The
1,
second
2,
one.
4, 5.
1, 2, 4.
Should be 1, 2, 4, 5, right?
Yes.
Because here we will take 25 days. So we start day number 41, and then it will take until day number 65. But here, since you have time, because the next one will start day number 66. If you want, you can delay this. So delaying is we call slack time, right? What is that slack time for plan training or task number 3? Slack time of task 3. Yes. Slack time means you can delay without affecting the overall project time. How many days you can delay?
20. 20.
You can delay 20. Is it? Everybody agrees? When you delay 20, right? You start with 61, 5, 66, okay, 65. Right, no? So you can delay 20 days. So the slack time for the task 3 is 20 days. I don't know whether you can understand now, whatever the things that I'm trying to explain it here. So I have explained everything from the task box. The task box, you have seen the task name, starting and ending dates, the ID number, that is task ID, and the duration. And there we will discuss, once you know the starting and ending point, how can you identify these? Any question from this part? Right. Okay. There's exercise you to try out, but that you can actually do during the project work or maybe before next week, so that we can discuss the answer here. So I'm not going to spend the time on this one. Let's move on to the next few steps, because I want to finish by 2:30 so that you have plenty of time for the group work. Okay, let's move on to the project scheduling part. In project scheduling, basically project manager develop specific time for each task. So you can see it depends on various things, the available resources, and sometimes it depends on the other task. So there could be like graphical tools. There are, if you find out the software, or in Microsoft we have Visio, for example, you can use to draw Gantt charts and PERT charts. Right. Then the idea there is, once you use these software tools, you can actually minimize the risks, right? Because I told you, like, delaying some of the tasks will affect the overall project time duration, right? And to conclude, right, we can say that to come up with a successful information system, right? You have to support business requirements, and you have to work within the budget. We have a cost limitation, and also you need to complete on time. So that means it's not an easy task. If you're going to say you are a project manager, you have to have sound project management skills, so that it will be the same as any other skills, right? So it's not that easy. You have to think about all these things, and the tools and the techniques that we have discussed is very useful, right? That's all for today, the theory. So now I would like to give you the group work, and the grouping will be the same as previous time, or do you want, maybe I will create new groups, right? So this is what you need to do. I will put you in groups for today's tasks, and as a group you can select one of your organizations. If your organization already selected the first task, I would like to take a different organization, because we can learn from each other. So if you have already presented your organization details in the previous one, I request you to not to use that information here, right? Select some other organization. Right, today we have about 22. So I will put you in 7 groups. So let me create 7 groups, and then I will present the group work first, and then I will put you in groups, right? First of all, you need to prepare SWOT analysis, identifying strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in an organization. And that means within the organization level. Then, depending on your outcome of the SWOT analysis, propose information systems to improve the objectives of the organization. Now remember, these objectives of the organization we have identified in the previous step. So when you are coming up with the organization, you have to list these objectives as well, because you are proposing information systems to improve the objectives of the organization. Now, for example, I told you one of the objectives of University of Peratani is to actually, develop or create an graduate who is actually 100% employable in the industry. So how can we, have our information systems to improve that objective? So that's how we should proceed. And then, does the proposed system present a strong business case? That means reasoning. Remember the term business case we discussed in the very beginning. Reasoning, is it justifiable? You can say yes or no, because once actually you have this business case, the top management has to look for this. They are the ones who are going to decide whether to allow this or not. So you justify the proposal. And finally, fact-finding methods, right? How do you identify, the facts to do the preliminary investigation? So in particular, I would like you to come up with some of the questions that you are going to include in a survey, like especially when you have a large number of employees, right? Getting interviews or meet in person is not going to work. Instead, we use usually questionnaires. Right. So that's all what we have. Now I'm going to share you my presentation so that everything is with you. So I will share the document. Right. I put a WhatsApp message and hope you have received it. Right. Now I would like you to put into groups, and then you can work on. Time to time I will log in there. In case if you need some help, you can put me WhatsApp message or you can put into Zoom chat. Okay, having said that, let me start creating groups. So I'm going to create okay. Please join this group, otherwise you have to do individual project. Remember last time. Please join and work.
Idea, Shrikant?
Yeah, Ruslan.
Doctor, excuse me. Hello, doctor.